All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, May. Agenda says first, but we are on the, what, 8th, 7th, 8th? May 8th, 2024. It is 9:03 a.m. My name is Ty Metzer, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Emily Klaus, and on Zoom, Commissioners Carolina Mejia and Commissioner Gary Edwards. It is Spirit Week here at Thurston County, so today's theme is wear your favorite band t-shirt, so that's why you'll see us all dressed kind of oddly for a board meeting, but we're trying to, participate in Spirit Week. And my seatmates are kind enough to wear one of my band's shirts, the Ole Mountain Boys, so that's pretty cool. All right, so we're here until 9 to 11 to cover topics that are pretty much revolve around emergency management. We have a couple of different major topics to cover, and the first one up is Emergency Medical Services Council bylaws. And just for the record, we also have Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder and Acting County Manager Robbie Campbell will be here in just a few minutes. She texted me she's running about 10 minutes late, and our county manager is excused today. But we have Director Ben Miller-Todd, and I'm going to turn this over to you, Ben.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Commissioner.
Introduce your guest, please.
Yes, absolutely. Myself, I'm Ben Miller-Todd. I'm the Director of Emergency Services for Thurston County. To my right here are both the Chair and Vice Chair from our EMS Council, our Chairperson, Stan Moon, Commissioner from Fire District 3, and our Fire District 6, I apologize. And then also Councilperson Lenny Greenstein from the Lacey City Council as our Vice Chair. I'm going to hand it over to Councilperson Greenstein to present the EMS Council bylaw overview. He headed up the committee, as is indicated at the top of the sheet in front of you, and we'll give you an overview of all the different changes that we made.
Great. Thank you, Ben. So I chaired a 5-member committee to review and recommend changes to the EMS bylaws. The changes were presented to the EMS board, who unanimously voted to recommend these changes to you, the Board of County Commissioners. The primary goal was to get better representation from the county-wide, while also not increasing the size of the board dramatically to make it too unwieldy. The second goal was to clean up some of the language and kind of make the bylaws better reflect what the EMS Council actually does. So we think we were pretty successful in that. The biggest changes for them really came in around the makeup of the board. So the board is operated with 13 members, although technically, according to the bylaws that you most recently approved, there's actually 17. We never filled those additional seats because we were going through this bylaw, review. So our recommendation is to have 4 city representatives. That would be Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and Yelm. That's who it winds up being, but the actual structure is that it would be cities over 10,000, which is why Yelm is added. And the other 3, Lacey, Olympia and Tumwater anyway, both are ALS contracts. So they both have contracts with EMS for ALS services, Advanced Life Support Services. That's also why we have the Lacey Fire District 3 represented, because we wanted to make sure all 3 of the ALS agencies were represented. 3 citizen reps, all of them at large, 3 fire commissioners. We're looking to add a rep from a hospital, which would rotate between the hospitals here in our jurisdiction, and 1 tribal representative. That would make up the same 13 we have currently, but with a bit of a different makeup. We'd also have 3 non-voting members. That would be a county commissioner, the medical program director, and the chair of our operations board. In addition to those changes to our board, we are also looking to add 2 people to the operations board. That would be 1 from behavioral health and 1 representative of public health. Other than that, most of the changes were really more administrative and don't really impact the operation of the EMS Council. Anything to add, Stan or Ben?
Maybe just a word about the Ops Committee. Change we made the Operations Committee.
Yeah, I did. So adding the behavioral health and public health? Yes.
And then we also you'll notice that when you would look at the track changes for operations, I think is what you're referring to, is that almost everything in the directive for or what the mission of the operations committee was realigned to better focus on what the current needs are in EMS.
It was one area of the bylaws that was very much out of date with actually today's operation, so. There are quite a few changes there, but it just aligns it with how they're functioning today and the support that the EMS Council needs from the Operations Committee.
Yeah, there were a lot of things in the bylaws that were just outdated. Just as an easy example, Ben as a director had spending authority of $1,000. We thought that might be a little bit outdated at this point.
Two bandages.
Exactly, yeah. So there were just a lot of things that needed to be updated and brought current.
So can you explain again, so Yelm would have its own independent, because Yelm's grown, then Yelm would have its own independent position?
Correct.
And in the past, there's just been one South County representative, so what would that look like now for South Thurston County?
So there wouldn't be a separate South County rep, it would be Yelm, and then any city that should grow to over 10,000 would then get a rep based on the way it's written. But there would be the citizen reps and the fire commissioner reps that would cover South County.
Kind of. So like, it has been problematic in the past, just the way it's been. And the South County's had one designated rep and they kind of maybe rotate it, but they really haven't. And there's been very little to no communication to Rainier, Bucota, to Nino, from the rep that's been there. And this almost sounds like it's a change in kind of a direction to worsen that. You know, like if there's, you know, I think
Well, I think part of
Consider
that, yeah, and part of that is it's been very difficult to get the South County rep involved, to actually be at the meetings, as you know. 'Cause
yeah, well, my
rep-
difficulty is
You were
like,
that
who
rep for a
is,
while.
yeah, like finding out who it is, who it was. Yelm kind of held on to it. It was one individual for a long time, and they wouldn't really communicate with the other communities, and so it was almost like we were just completely in the dark.
Yeah, and again, we can certainly work on making sure the communication is there. The idea of having the Yelm rep was to have a little bit more, having someone directly responsible, because we did have a lot of trouble having that South County rep actually showing up. They have not participated in the years that I've been on the council. So.
I think additionally, as we're looking at this, we wanted to create bylaws that were more scalable as we move forward. And we wanted to acknowledge that the needs of Yelm as it grows so quickly are becoming much more municipal in terms of their independent. So we blended all three needs, or I should say four, between Bucota, Rainier, Tenino, and Yelm. And Yelm's been growing so quickly in terms of its need that we wanted to call out those municipal areas in the county that were growing over 10,000. They really have unique needs, just like Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater were called out. We wanted to make sure Yelm was looped into a representative on that front, and that they weren't speaking for the other three because they may not fully align with the needs within Rainier, at this point, Rainier, Tenino, and Bucota. With that being said, we also wanted to make sure that we're keeping the Fire Commissioners Association engaged and keeping those three fire commissioners as they will select them. And no one representative can actually represent a secondary fire commissioner. So you can't have two fire commissioners from the same district. And the association themselves are responsible for putting forward those specific individuals. We ran this past our fire commissioner reps on the EMS council for two separate meetings, just to make sure that we were looking at this from an equitable standpoint and making sure that we were engaging those communities so we didn't lose them. Additionally, we need to make sure from the Medic One side that we're equally engaging with those communities and meeting their needs. But we wanted to give as much, I would say back to those local councils and those local, I would say commissioner associations to be able to dictate who they want at the table to be able to represent their needs. As it sits now,
But then it excludes three communities.
in terms of the EMS coverage that's provided.
Just as far as the governance and the opportunity to be engaged.
Have you, like, on the at-large seats, like, I mean, would you prioritize having someone from South County, or was there discussion of maybe one of those seats is a resident of, I don't know, just thinking of ways to make the pieces fit?
We can absolutely entertain that. This is why we're doing that work session, to make sure that we're we're gaining all the input that we need on these bylaws, because this is a significant change. And so there could be a discussion at EMS Council that we bring back and ask, how would we prioritize the bylaws to say one of those positions needs to be equal to the representation that was provided between Tenino, Bucota, and Rainier, that it's prioritized.
Ben and I did present this to one of the monthly meetings at the Fire Commissioners Association. So there was some dialogue with the Fire Commissioners Association about this particular representation and that feedback from them, so.
But there's not necessarily municipal representatives from those communities at the fire commission meetings, so, you know, that might not get voiced.
On the operations committee, when you have your behavioral health representative, what kind of how broad is that? Is that somebody that, what are the qualifications to meet that?
So in terms of, oh, sorry, I
Go
apologize.
ahead, no, go ahead.
We left it fairly broad. We actually had some dialogue at the operations committee over how that should be scoped. Originally, it called out South Sound Behavioral Health, because from an EMS perspective, a lens of who we would coordinate with, we needed a hospital that would be able to take or accept patients from the field that we wanted to coordinate with at the table, and South Sound is moving in that direction. In terms of being able to medically clear, being able to take patients directly from the field, and so we had originally called out South Sound Behavioral Health, but that was less scalable in the event that we added more infrastructure into the county, and so we left it as a behavioral health hospital. Broadly, it would start with the only one that would qualify as a behavioral health hospital in our county would be South Sound Behavioral Health. And so they will be the original individual on the seat, but should we continue to grow, it leaves it a little bit more broad to coordinate.
So the word hospital's in there.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
And then one last question for me. It sounds like it's built, the structure's built so that if a city, I don't know if any of the South County cities are gonna get 10,000 anytime soon, but if they did, it's automatic. It doesn't have to-
Automatic seats.
you don't have to go- okay.
Correct.
Automatic, yeah, okay.
I think the
Yeah.
last part that's important to call out, just so you're aware, so that it's just called out in this list. We did, in terms of vacancies, streamline the administrative process. Just so you're aware, it used to be that the Board of County Commissioners may declare a position vacant, but there was no automatic or administrative process to do that without board action. And so what we did is just simply change the may declare to considers, that the Board of County Commissioners considers that position vacant when they meet the stipulations in the bylaws, which are three consecutive absences. From the,
Unexcused absence.
Unexcused absences, yeah.
so.
And then we would go back to whatever body had appointed them. So if it was a fire commissioner, we'd ask the fire commissioners to appoint someone else.
After three. Okay. Commissioner Edwards, Kitchener Mejia, anything? You have questions?
No, how are we doing? Can you hear me this time around, Chair?
I can hear you well.
No, I'm good. You guys are asking all the good questions and we'll see where it goes from there.
No questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, would be the next step for us to, what happens next?
In terms of, if we do significant changes to the makeup, that needs to go back to the EMS Council body for the recommendation. And so we want to bring back some of the considerations and language that were presented today. So we address making sure that we have representation from our South County communities represented on the board. After that, it would be brought back forward as an agenda item, a consent item on the Board of County Commissioners for approval, on your agenda for approval.
So one question, so to get that representation for South County, would a stipulation that one of the three citizen reps be from one of the three South County cities? Would that,
That would be, yeah, I think that would be
suffice?
ideal,
Okay.
yeah.
just wanted to know so I know what to bring back to council.
Or like on a rotating basis between, or let the cities decide, you know, but it is hard sometimes, like the Solid Waste Advisory Board, we have a vacancy from a Rainier City Council person, and it's hard to sometimes get one of them to attend and go, but, you know, that's kind of the nature, it's the nature of it sometimes.
Just a clarifying question, if there were that kind of rotation, or who would then do the appointment of that citizen individual?
So there's 3 resident positions have always been approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay.
And so we bring those applications forward for recommendation from the EMS Council to the Board of County Commissioners.
And so if there is a concern then of a lack of representation or participation, then that also comes back to the board.
I would ask that one be appointed by the remaining 3 cities, Dakota, Rainier, Tenino, or a recommendation from those mayors to the Board of County Commissioners. I mean, that, to me, that would.
Why don't, I mean, we could, because you don't know, I mean, my concern is not what you're saying. My concern is just if they had a seat and they weren't actually using it, then putting in extra stuff, is it going to be used, or the mechanisms that we create going to be used? So we could say something like, solicit, we solicit recommendations from the South County mayor, like keeping it in our purview, maybe we get nothing, and then it's our decision. Or maybe we get one mayor that says, hey, this is the person I think's good, or maybe we get all 3. We get, or maybe they all come to agreement. But having that kind of be permissive and then stays with us, but we kind of call out that that the board would solicit recommendations from each of the mayors of the city, something like that. And then if it doesn't happen, we still have the latitude to do what we think's right. But if we get it, then that just gives us good candidates that we're, it's obviously it's, it would be implied that we would, probably take one of those recommendations.
There's something similar to that with the 911 board. There's one rep, I believe, from all of those communities, and sometimes it rotates, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it sticks with one person for a long time, and, there's gotta be some flexibility, but
Yeah.
I think to reduce, so the whole idea in rewriting this was also to reduce your administrative burden. We would put that funneling of the 3 mayors, putting forward a recommendation to the EMS Council, and the EMS Council could then ultimately recommend that position for that citizen at large, that the 3 mayors ultimately are the ones recommending when we write it to the EMS Council, the citizen representative, for those 3 communities.
You say like one at-large seat would be selected from recommendations, or would be, I want to keep it as flexible as possible, but getting the intent that you get that input.
Yes.
What if you did it sort of like you do the library position, where one can bring a suggestion forward and then it's circulated to all 3?
All 3,
All 3 cities.
but I'm sorry, does it remember?
So the thing that I'm thinking about is when there's a position open on the Timberland Library Board,
Yeah,
one jurisdiction brings their suggestion forward and the others have to agree.
so the left one disability board.
So
does it.
instead of waiting for the 3 to come together and say, here's our person, someone could come forward and staff could route it to the 3 cities and say, is this person okay with all of you? It just kind of flips it around a little and makes it easier to
yeah,
get
you
someone.
guys can figure out how to word it. I mean,
Yeah.
one seat, one at-large seat wouldn't really be an at-large seat. It would be a seat that's selected from nominations provided by South County mayors.
The only thing I would recommend, because of, like you mentioned, the flexibility, I think it should be preference given to South County, but if we can't fill it with someone from the 3 cities, if we can't get that volunteer, that we maybe open it more broadly, because it has been difficult to get representation from South County that actually participates in the meetings.
One of the challenges.
But
of
how long would
meeting-
at what point would you cut it off and say, oh, we've waited too long?
And then what
I mean, the
happens the
whole
next year
point-
when you've got somebody from Lacey sitting there at large and there's 3 South County mayors, one of the mayors is like, I want it.
Yeah.
What,
I think the whole point is to find someone.
Okay.
And it's very important for us that we hear from the citizens of the largest part of our deliberations at the council. It's a very important part of the constituents that we serve. The rest of us are directly involved in some aspect of emergency service delivery and So we really need those representatives at the table.
Yeah.
So having one of the three vacant is leaving a hole that we don't want to have.
Another wrinkle, maybe, look you, Wayne, but like, isn't the perspective, I mean, I've never sat on the EMS council, so I'm asking, is the perspective that you want more of a South County perspective, or is it really about something to do with the cities? Because I mean, you know, the mayors, you know what I mean, like, don't you just want someone that's gonna be cut, like, that's gonna have to be facing the coverage and the coverage challenges or whatever, you know, I mean, it doesn't necessarily like matter that they live in the city boundaries of Tenino, or does that matter?
I mean,
Versus
to
somebody that's.
some people it might, but
Yeah.
I would leave that up to those three mayors. If they
Yeah.
want, you know, like, if they want somebody that's an elected representative because they've been, you know, chosen by the public to represent them, that might be their position, or maybe the three of them get together and they're like, you know, hey, that guy Ty over there, he really is, you know, passionate about this. We want to pick him. You know, I would say be flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to encourage them, if we're going to rely on the mayors for those recommendations, I'd want to encourage them to, they're not bound to people that live in their municipal boundaries. They're looking for somebody within their broader community, you know, that would kind of meet, they would have that flexibility.
Sure.
To put somebody forward they thought was going to be a good representative.
We'll work
Okay.
on some language to address that, and this is a good conversation to be able to springboard that and look at how we might modify that language to make sure we're getting representation from those three specific communities.
If you say the District 4, the County Commissioners District 4, that covers a pretty large area that goes south Tumwater all the way to the county line, and that might, you know, that covers Rochester, Maytown, all those other communities as well. That might be one way to do it.
But not Yelm, yeah, it kind of fits in a way,
Yeah.
because you've already got Yelm covered. All right, well, that's interesting. Anything else?
No, this was just a work
Straightforward,
session
really,
on
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
We
This
just
is
gone
pretty
through a lot of these
straightforward.
discussions with our boards, with expanding to 5 commissioners. We had to kind of massage a lot of our councils, and each one's unique, and but yeah, it's just good to try to broaden out the representation, so we appreciate your efforts to do that. Most of this sounds great.
I have to applaud the chair who headed up the committee. And I do want to call out that we wanted to make sure that we were looking at this from a variety of different perspectives. And 2 of our citizens at large actually sat on the committee to help make this up. So I just wanted to call that out as well. But thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. They're stuck with me for the next 2, so.
All right, so we've all got our little summary sheet you can take with us. Next up is Puget Sound Energy Public Safety Power Shutoff and Thurston County's Ready, Set, Go initiative. And we have PowerPoints on this.
PSE up to the table. And I believe there was a submitted presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Just tell me to sit down.
Good to be back with all of you.
I'm going to give just a real brief preface as we're pulling this up. So as we had discussed, the commissioners had discussed as we were going around this month, the new, any wildfire initiatives that PSE would be putting into place. One of those initiatives that we've been discussing is the new program for Thurston, not new in general, but new program for Thurston is the Public Safety Power Shutoff. And PSE is here to discuss, as we walk through this, I would say a couple of their initiatives, as well as allowing an opportunity, as we had talked about, to ask any questions about the Public Safety Power Shutoff, what those notices would look like, what communities may be affected, and ultimately the different mitigating strategies that they're looking to do moving forward. Does that give a pretty decent overview to that? With that, I will hand it over for introductions.
Yes, good morning.
Slides or?
No, yeah, please try it. I just got my notes in front of me, thank you. Christine Rompa here with Puget Sound Energy, and I have brought with me today Sarah Wattenberg, who is our municipal liaison manager. She works closely with with your public works director and your emergency management folks as well. So we are here to talk about our wildfire mitigation and response program. So over the past decade, wildfires have become a significant public health and safety concern for much of the western United States. As the state's largest utility, PSC is taking a comprehensive approach to decrease the risk of wildfires. We're working to balance safety and the reliable delivery of energy to our communities. So these are some of our program elements. Our wildfire mitigation and response program makes investments to increase the reliability and resiliency of our electric system. We do that using the newest technologies and best practices to respond to our region's increasing wildfire risk. Our plan is broken down into 4 approaches. Through situational awareness, we monitor the condition of our electric system and the environment around it using risk modeling, real-time fire weather monitoring, field technologies, and pre-wildfire season inspections. These methods allow us to accurately assess the risk of wildfire in our region. Grid hardening maintains and improves our current infrastructure, the poles and the wires you see every day. This can include enhanced vegetation management in wildfire-prone areas, installing covered overhead power lines called tree wire, and in some cases, relocating power lines underground, known as strategic undergrounding. Operational procedures are used to provide proactive and real-time guidelines for the operation of our electric system, including prevention measures, which we'll get into later, response activities during periods of elevated wildfire risk. And of course, keeping our customers informed is also a key component of this work. We're committed to keeping our customers and impacted communities informed and engaged in our wildfire program, which is why we're here today. So this slide shows our risk model, and as you can see, thankfully, up and down most of our counties, our risk is very low, and you'll see that in the blue area. Assessing and mitigation risk is a central component of PSC Wildfires Mitigation and Response Program. This risk model helps us understand the environment around our infrastructure and other factors that can increase wildfire risk. So our risk model incorporates data that includes wildfire probability risk and potential impact, historical fire data, and whether areas have historically correlated weather patterns. This is used to determine which areas are likely to experience higher risk weather conditions at the same time. Then we add all that information on top. We lay it on top of our existing grid infrastructure, and it helps us understand how we can interact with the environmental risk factors surrounding us. If you folks have questions, feel free to jump in at any time. So using this risk model helps us know where we can spend effectively on our grid hardening. So understanding the potential interactions between our infrastructure and the environment helps us to focus our investments for grid hardening projects so that we can further reduce risk, establish additional situation awareness tools like weather stations, and target the use of operational procedures such as enhanced power line settings, or EPS, that makes the electric system more sensitive to potential hazards and automatically shuts off when tree lines fall on it. And this will happen, or PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff. This will be used during critical fire weather conditions. And so we update our risk model annually to account for the changes to our infrastructure and our ability to capture more detailed real-time data. Okay, so operational procedures. What do we do operationally to decrease the risk? We pause work during elevated wildfire risk conditions. PSE may temporarily pause planned construction activities or limit the use of certain equipment or procedures. I've already mentioned this briefly, enhanced power line settings. So when the fire risk conditions are elevated, PSE may use enhanced power line settings to make our power lines more sensitive to potential hazards in the line, such as a tree branch, The power lines will automatically turn power off quickly to reduce the fire starting. EPS keeps our customers safer, but as a result, they may experience more unplanned power outages when the settings are in place. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on slide 6. And I already mentioned this public safety power shut off. It is when we temporarily shut the power off our power lines off during extreme fire risk weather conditions to help prevent wildfires from starting. It's a measure of last resort to keep you and your community safe. And we'll give you more details on the next slide. So this slide is interesting. Some of the key takeaways that you'll see in the dark purple, we have our reactive degeneration information. This is the only type of outage that's related to an active fire. It's driven by emergency responder request. Generally, we frame this tool as we're a partner in an ongoing emergency response. The incident commander or fire chief, et cetera, is going to determine when to give the all clear to re-energize in this instance. EPS and PSPS are PSC-driven proactive and preventive tools. You'll see that in the green and in the orange. For both of these tools, in theory, there is no fire. So think of EPS outages like any unplanned or storm-related outage. The proactive measure is turning on these more sensitive settings, not the outage itself. That is why customers don't receive advance notice of these outages. They happen automatically, just like any other storm-related outage. By contrast, think of PSPS like a planned outage. We are proactively turning the power lines off at a set date and time in advance of the weather event, basically, hopefully, eliminating the risk of a fault or equipment damage, potentially causing sparks at all. Because we are proactively turning power off, customers will receive advance notice about that power shut off. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. So some of the things we consider. PSC will consider PSPS when weather and fire experts forecast dangerous conditions, including strong winds, very dry vegetation, and low humidity. When combined, these conditions create the risk that damage to our equipment could start a fire that has the potential to spread rapidly. PSPS could be used anywhere in our service territory if a combination of dangerous conditions are forecast. However, customers in areas of higher risk on PSC's risk model are more likely to experience PSPS. We will communicate with impacted customers in advance of and during a PSPS. Our goal is to notify customers 2 days before a PSPS outage starts, but weather conditions can change quickly, and timing is dependent on the weather forecast. We will continue to provide updates about every 12 hours in the lead up to and during the outage until power is restored. So this slide outlines our communication strategy with respect to public safety power shutoffs. I want to stress that the 2-day notice is a goal, not a guarantee, and that's because weather is unpredictable, and the decision to do a PSPS is driven by weather conditions. Customers will receive automated call, text, or email alerts based on their account preferences, so we encourage all of our customers to make sure that their account contact information is up to date. Customers with medical life support status noted in their account will receive earlier notification, when possible, via phone call from PSC staff, in addition to receiving other regular customer alerts. Whenever possible, we will issue priority PSPS notifications to public safety partners, local jurisdictions, and community organizations. These alerts are sent 48 hours to 72 hours in advance of a potential issue, depending on the weather forecasts. We'll also share updates about potential or active outages via our website, psc.com/alerts, our outage map, and social media and other partner agencies. People who don't have a customer account can also opt in to receive updates from us in an event that we have an issue. So restoring power after a shutoff. We will only
Can I ask real quick?
Yes, please.
Your last slide there. when you say enhanced communications for medical life support customers, is that a group that is registered with you, or how do you know
Right.
who those people are?
We ask them to register with us, yes. They need to let us know that they've got equipment, like life-saving equipment, breathing equipment, oxygen, and that, we put an indicator on their account, and then we will call them ahead of time. If they've got that indicator, we try to give them even more time so that they're aware whether they need to charge their batteries, et cetera. Yes, but they do need to let us know, so we encourage folks to let us know. They're a more vulnerable component of our community. All right, returning power on. We will only restore power when it's safe to do so after the weather has passed and crews can inspect the impacted power lines. It could last several days if damaging wind occurs. So unlike a storm-related outage, crews will not begin line patrols or repairs until after the weather conditions have passed. This is because the power shutoffs are precautionary measures to ensure that any weather-related damage to our system does not cause sparks or fires, so we can't restore power as quickly because we're still facing the high-risk conditions in general. Once the weather is clear, crews will patrol and inspect all the lines that were turned off for the power safety shutoff and assess any damage or repair needs. At this point, we will publish ETRs on our outage map. And so preparing for a public safety power, we have a lot of information on our website that we share with folks, just like we do for our storm preparedness. A lot of information. Make sure your PSC account information is up to date. If you're a medically vulnerable customer, please call our customer service to see if you qualify for the designation. Everyone should create an emergency plan and build a kit with supplies that last at least 3 days. And we have lots of information about that stuff on our website. So we will be having a series of wildfire open houses, and we will have one in West Thurston County. Our area is set to have it on May 21st at the Griffin Fire Department. We'd love for folks to come join us for that. We will be there to answer questions and provide information. And with that, we are happy to take any questions that you have. And Sarah can answer all of them.
Go ahead, yes.
I have a whole slew of questions. Is that okay?
Take it off.
Thank you. Okay, so my first question is, how is PSC coordinating with emergency services for this power shutoffs? Anytime something like this is activated, of course, they're on call. So what is the coordination and resource sharing that is happening?
We're actually, I mean, this is kind of the inaugural trip around the communication and coordination. We have met with emergency services prior to this, and it was their suggestion that we come and talk to all of you. So that's kind of the first step. We are hosting that open house, and during that open house, emergency management is going to also have a table there so that we can kind of share the same communication to the community. So those are kind of the initial steps. We are working closely to try to make sure that we can have a smooth and seamless communication between the two entities. So I know that's kind of an ambiguous answer, but we're working on it is kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at.
We're used to working with them too as well, because we work very closely with the county staff when we have any kind of storm issue as well. So we've got our contacts in place.
If you don't mind, I'd also clarify one of the questions. I think also in terms of the impact, I think it's important to discuss, and what I'm not sure you could quite answer today. So remember, I'm a friend. I'm not trying to create problems. But with that, how many people are we looking to impact potentially in Thurston County when we do shut off these isolated circuits? So we have an idea. So part of the issue that we're working through is that if residents need shelter, a lot of that rolls back over onto the county in terms of that support when there's a proactive shut off of power. And so the number involved, what the impacts are to the county and our infrastructure, and how we can work to potentially support that mutually is something that we're looking to do.
Thank you, Ben. And just to add on, because that was part of my next questions of emergency shelters, that's the part where, you know, if something happens, people call us because they need cooling or they need somewhere to go plug in or they need something. And when it comes to resources, those are county resources that are going to set up those emergency shelters. So is PSC going to be providing any additional resources for us to be able to set up those emergency shelters? since this is a PSC initiated, you know, policy that is moving forward, and this is, of course, going to be additional services that the county's going to have to provide?
Great questions. I have no idea. We will get back to you on those. So
I know that we kind of talked about it briefly when we met previously, so it is still something that's kind of in the works. I know that we talked about potentially having like some PSU staff members kind of come out. I don't know if you've seen during some of the bigger storms that we've had where we've set up little tents and we've had like a charging station where you can charge your phone or whatever other device you need. And I think they might have provided water and some kind of snack type things. So I know that in the past we have done that in storms, like the really big ones. So I think we've kind of talked about potentially doing something similar to that in those instances. And I do want to mention that these PSPS instances are going to be centralized or localized. They're not going to be like the whole service territory. It will be down to just one circuit. And I'm not sure if they can kind of shrink it down even more granular on that circuit, but I know that it won't be the entire county out at the same time unless it's a really big event.
We had a presentation here from Dr. Gordon Wheat, basically saying, right, and he brought forth data, and TRPC did a presentation of us how much heat is becoming just an emergency issue, especially with people dying from heat in their homes because they don't have access to it, right? And just seeing this initiative and then seeing that going parallel as we're trying to put the information of, and I cannot remember, I'm looking at you, Ben, for assistance with this, for heat, what's it called?
So there's the heat-related emergency plan.
Yes.
That we're looking at, but we also need to be cognizant.
Heat hazard, yeah.
And when
Thank
we're shutting off power in these instances, we're actually driving up the risk. And so I think the question comes out here as more of a risk-benefit in terms of how
This whole thing concerns me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, it's scary. It feels like overreach. I'm like sitting here wondering, like, is there anything we can do to stop PSE from being able to shut off people's power like this? You know, like, is this a statewide thing, or is it just
it's our
here?
jurisdiction, but the UTC did require us to make wildfire plans back in 2021.
Yeah.
They started that program. So what other utilities are doing, I can't speak to, but I know we definitely have our plan. But
I'm trying to make sense of this in my head, because like I can understand, you know, how power lines are affected in a wind emergency.
I just keep
But
going
then
back
when you
to
talk about
what happened to Hawaii. You don't want to see
heat-related
what's
thing.
happening in Hawaii, or the same thing in California. Do you want? I mean, those are kind of. How do you balance that?
Sure.
You know.
But then when there's a statewide drought, and you're like, well, we're just gonna pinpoint this little area and shut their power off for a couple days, how does that like mitigate any problems? And then, you know, like during a heat emergency, people need their power on, and then I really don't think you're gonna be able to contact everybody that's got some type of, you know, medical device, or, you know, everybody, you know, people with LVADs in their houses that, you know, they lose power and their heart's going to stop working. They're not gonna be contacting you, and then there's no way that, you know, at least in the rural areas, they wanna be left alone. And, you know, the heat emergencies that we have, you know, like we set these shelters up and nobody goes, at least in the experience when I've, you know, set up these heat shelters, nobody goes. They tough it out at home, but, you know, if you shut people's power off for a couple of days, this is gonna blow up in everyone's face, I think. You know, you're gonna have people with pitchforks and, you know, bonfire, you know, torches lit.
So what's the alternative? What would you ask us to do? Just go with
I'm
the
still
risk?
wrestling with that,
Yeah,
but
so
like,
are we.
I don't think this is an answer that's gonna play out well.
Can I ask, so have you done modeling with like recent weather to predict how often this would occur based on, let's say, the last 10 years or 5 years of how many times would there have been extreme weather conditions that would have required this? Is this gonna happen once a year, 10 times a year, or once a decade? Like, you know, with flooding, we have 100-year flood events. And we take measures that we would hope to only use once every 100 years. Now, of course, we're getting 100-year floods every 7 years or whatever, but have you done that kind of modeling to know how likely this is gonna, how much of an everyday thing this is gonna be for people?
Yeah, that's one of the factors on the slide. You'll see the second point down there, historical fire data. That is part of the risk model. And so I think that's why you'll see our area in blue. I think this is a real big issue for mostly our customers in Eastern Washington, but we're still taking it very seriously and doing as much prep as we can. Are we going to have to shut off the power? Probably not, but maybe. You know, we don't know, and we are trying our best to balance the risks. We know people don't like their power shut off, but at the same time, if we have a severe, severe drought with a lot of dry weather, a lot of dry conditions, and if the wind's blowing, do we want to risk a wildfire situation where people are you know, getting burned versus, you know, not being able to charge their phones? So it's a balancing act. We don't have all the answers. We're trying our best.
Saying not charging their phones kind of diminishes.
I
There's
agree.
legitimate concerns. It's not just about charging phones. It's
Right.
about having air
Cooking your- and
conditioning
your
for
food,
grandma.
Keeping your
and-
freezers on, agreed. But I'm just trying to stress that we don't have all the answers, but we are trying to do our best to balance the needs of, we don't want a wildfire. So it's,
PSC's gotten a lot of bad press lately, and I don't think this is gonna help.
Interesting.
There's a lot of people that are upset over some of the recent changes, and I mean, like, I'm just saying, like, this is
Help me understand, what changes are they upset about?
the changes with gas policies. There's a lot of people that
Oh,
are upset
yes.
about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, that's gotta settle in. There's
Well, let's
education. and
clarify,
so
that's
it's like-
not a
it's Keith's
PSC
fault.
policy. We are reacting to the state mandates that were put in place back in 2019. So this is affecting every utility across the state, not just PSC.
My concern when I heard about it from Ben was just the types, when you describe what extreme weather would trigger this, it sounds like stuff that can last a long time. I mean, I grew up in California. We were under extreme drought for like my whole childhood, 20 years or something. So when you say that, well, if there's extreme drought and there's high winds or something, and I grew up in the desert where there's high winds every day. So when you say that, and it's like, it makes me wonder, like, well, how long, you know, like if we're just talking about a day here, a day there, but what you're describing doesn't sound like a day's worth of conditions. It sounds like you can be in an extreme drought and dry. When you talk about dry conditions, it can be weeks, months where you don't get any rain and those extreme dry conditions persist. So I'm just trying to get a sense of the magnitude of what you're talking about. You know, if you turn my power off for a day here, a day there, that's cool if that's a safety thing. But when you're talking about months or weeks, that's a little bit different.
So I do want to mention that this absolutely is a last resort. Like, we have done everything else that we can, and this is what we have to do. I don't think it's going to take place when it's just dry. It's more if it's dry and there's high winds to kind of create that perfect storm. We're not going to shut the power off for the whole summer. That would obviously be a problem. The other thing that I want to mention is that currently, actually we just finished, we're doing proactive patrols of, for instance, right now, Griffin 15, which is out Steamboat Island and Summit Lake. So in those proactive patrols, we're actually going through and saying, you know, this pole is too dry or it has rot or damage of some sort. We need to replace it immediately. We're replacing any sort of cross arms that we don't use anymore that don't meet our standard because they potentially can fail, you know, for whatever reason. We're also, I know we're doing some fire resistant wrap on some of the poles out there too, so that if there is a fire, at least that protects the pole, which in turn would keep it from falling over and in turn keep it from creating more of a fire hazard. So we are doing some proactive patrols. We just recently finished our Griffin 15 circuit. So those things are all in the works in the background, and they kind of complement this whole program for wildfire mitigation. And again, PSPS is a last resort. So we are working proactively as well to try to prevent having to do that. We don't want to do that.
I wanted to clarify, just scope it a little bit. It's a little harder on this map when you're looking at the entire region. But it's hard to zoom in here, but really what they're trying to identify is very dark red. When we're talking about that, we're looking at, you see a lot of medium level hazard within Thurston County, but there are two specific areas that were discussed that were extremely dark red in terms of vegetation that was in that area, historic data that was in that area, which is around Steamboat Island, and also down south around West Thurston. So as it exits the southwest side of our county, those two areas have historic fire data and also infrastructure that may be more indicative. What we're still working on and what we're trying to get to and what we'd like to have an idea of are how many residents are on the circuits that are identified as high hazard. And so that we have a better answer from PSC as to what is the impact if we do shut off power. All the questions we have, what is the sheltering, what are the medical devices in those areas? And I know there's some HIPAA components, but we absolutely need to make sure that we're asking questions about data sharing so that our emergency services that supply those areas, which PSC has a database that for HIPAA compliance, there's not currently questions asking whether they can share that information. And we're asking that those questions be asked and implemented so there is data sharing with the services that would be provided to those residents from an emergency services standpoint. Which areas have ventilators that are on power? Which areas have medical devices that cannot be shut off? What's the impact? So that when we're working through those coordinated efforts, we know it's hard to quantify, I would say, both questions, both sides. It's hard to quantify what the impact is and how many people are affected by these specific circuits in which area. And so I think some of our concern is that a lot of these policies were created, I believe, in Eastern Washington and are migrating over to Western Washington as our climate changes, but you're also migrating into the 6th largest county. So now you're a much more dense population as you're looking to potentially activate PSPS initiatives, which are a much larger impact in terms of the providers that the residents that are on those circuits. And so that's, I think, what we're asking as well is the impact question. Because that's going to roll it's going to roll onto that county to supply those resources.
I think we can get that data as far as a potential number of impacted customers to provide that, yeah.
And then what that partnership looks like. And so if those are going out, how can we work together to make sure that we're load leveling some of the impacts?
So, the health conditions, is there going to be transportation for those folks who have medical equipment that they need to transport maybe to an emergency shelter or somewhere where, what is going to be the coordination for that? And then my second question is in regards to language accessibility for individuals who English is not their first language and who are living in these zones. And how is PSC communicating with them to be sure that they're getting the correct information and they know that power is going to be shut off for some time?
I think we already have some systems in place for translation for any language other than English. But this is all still kind of new to us even, and there's a lot of manpower being put into it. So you're kind of getting like the sneak peek here. So there are a lot of questions that you have. They're really great questions, and I will take those back and we will get the answers to them. But again, this is kind of in its infancy, so I apologize that I can't answer all your questions. They're great questions though, and this is why we want to come in front of you so that we can get these questions and get them answered before we go out to everyone about it.
When is the open house? I'm sorry, at Griffin?
May 21st, Griffin Fire Department.
4:30, Griffin Fire.
And then there's also, we'll have a presentation at the executive seminar on June 3rd as well.
Commissioner Edwards?
I'm going to suggest that you get more answers before you have your community meeting. I really do. I don't think you've got it figured out yet, from what I'm hearing. So whether you can.
What would you like us to focus on, Commissioner Edwards?
Well, just to make darn sure you have all those answers so that you don't say, well, I don't know. Well, we're looking into that. I don't think the community will accept that very well. Now, I mean, they're gonna have to accept it, but if you wanna have community aggravation, that's probably a good way to create that. I wonder about things like keeping up proper maintenance on power lines and such, you know, as far as the limbs, because we see bad things happen, yes, when there's a storm, but usually when we've got a heat situation and a dry situation around here, we don't have weather that goes with it, kind of like Commissioner Menser talked about. You know, that's just not the way it usually works. The other piece is, are you going to be isolating certain areas? I mean, municipalities, as a general rule, don't have any of these problems with fire situations. So are they going to be okay? Or when you cut off areas, are they going to be cut off as well? Are you going to put out notices maybe to folks? We hope we won't ever use any of these safety measures that we've put in place, but if you think you have a need for continued electrical power, I mean, they have battery packs that people can buy, generators. I would think giving them an option, you know, like right now, I think you can get certain appliance benefits, you know, if you buy a more efficient appliance, you know, you'll give them a break on something, or buy this kind, make some recommendations. Are you gonna do the same thing for power generation? Whether that is batteries, whether that's generators on hand. I believe there's a lot of folks out there that do have medical equipment that, so they're gonna, once they know that this is a possibility you're dealing with, they're gonna probably wanna buy one of these battery packs or one of these generators that could help things out. And I think the bottom line, the public is gonna be suspicious about this right away. And so is it because of the big push for electric stoves over gas stoves, electric cars over, you know, fossil fuel, that kind of thing? So is it more likely to take place in rural America versus municipal areas? I don't know. Do you have those kind of answers already? Can you answer that today?
I think that, you know, one of the slides that we talked about, it could happen in any of our territory. So it just depends on where we have a wildfire. I think you're right. In municipalities, we have less trees, we have less, you know,
Depends on
fuel
the
load
grid
is
that
what
it's
they
on
call
too,
it.
right?
Right.
Like you can't just exclude, you know, Rainier from getting shut off because Rainier's grid is this massive chunk of property that includes, you know, the city and then the rural areas and. So
A lot of our lines are undergrounded. Undergrounding is one of the things that we're doing to keep people safe, because it's the trees that land on the lines
that's
that
super
cause the harm.
expensive, right?
It is very expensive, but yeah, 49% of our distribution lines are already underground. So, but yeah, it could happen anywhere in our territory.
But they're probably not underground in these high-risk areas that we're
Right,
worried about.
exactly. That's where we did the risk modeling, where we laid our infrastructure on top of our, you know, the risk factors. So, yeah.
So in Thurston County, because it just didn't even come out on the slide, it was too small. You're saying those little red dots over by Steamboat Island
You
and,
can, so the higher risk areas, you can kind of see some of the red dots that come up along Steamboat Island here.
so it's all just in that area?
Yep, and then you have a couple red lines coming out on the very southwest corner.
Is this map available where you could zoom in?
Is it on the site?
I can't find it on the website.
Yeah, I don't think so. No.
I will see if I can get a copy, send it out.
Just a Thurston specific?
That's kind of been a complaint of ours, is that it's such a big map and it makes it hard to really zoom in on that.
you do your best public outreach too. Well, this is a hot topic and 3 years from now, everybody's forgot about it.
And that's the whole purpose of the open houses, is to get those kind of questions and feedback from the community. What are you thinking? What do you need from PSC with regards to this? And I really appreciate the language question, English as a second language, and how are we, reaching out to those customers, so.
An
this is all
open
great.
house in Griffin is pretty isolated with regard to the rest of the county too.
That's
I would
good feedback too.
definitely say that. That
So-
does not reach out far and wide.
I think that the reason that was the point of focus at this moment is because that is the circuit that we're working on right now to proactively protect, and then that potentially showed the highest possibility of having that PSPS shut off, even though it's still very low possibility that's gonna happen.
Are you gonna be assuring the public that you are doing all that maintenance work that needs to be done? So that it'd be less likely for the need to do any of this, because you could have a car wreck during dry weather
Yes.
and knock the pole down or whatever, and then you got a fire. So what we're gonna talk about, 4th of July, we're gonna shut all the power off because we got a bunch of dummies out there drinking more than they should, or something. That's an extreme, obviously, but, are you gonna, talk about a lack of ability to meet the need, so you might have to shut off areas? Is that ever gonna be a case that happens? I mean, is that something you're up against now? And you mentioned earlier, because some things are policy put in place through legislative action that the states put out.
I'm shocked that you can even do this, because you can't just go shutting somebody's water off. I don't think that we can, unless they're not paying or something
Well,
like that.
no, even if they're not paying, you can't shut it
Yeah,
off.
you can't just shut their
So,
water off.
There's some real issues here that I think need to be thought out. I'm kind of right here with my seatmates on concerns. And I think it's just not adequately thought out by the utilities. And if there are things that, are going to be adding to the problem, and I say capacity ability on your part, you should be talking about that.
Yeah.
Don't sweep it under the rug that we've got this problem, and we're gonna have to, every Sunday, we're gonna have to shut off the power if, people are using too much.
We do vegetation work year-round. It's one of the things that we do for storm prep. And with wildfire, it's becoming more and more of a top priority, to get out there and really get those trees trimmed back, just looking at that fuel load. So, but great questions and really great feedback. So, any more questions?
I do think the one thing about that, Commissioner Fournier brought up about being able to shut off, we're prevented from shutting off water as a mechanism to get you to pay the bill. Can't do that. Now, eventually you can, once you go through the process, but as a water purveyor, you're not allowed to shut the water off just because somebody's missing their payment or kind of slipping on hard times.
Yeah, and how do we coordinate with you with respect to, we want to shut the power off and you don't think it's necessary? What do we do in those kind of circumstances? So, that's another question that I have
I
sitting
think
here.
it's
thinking.
difficult for messaging when you look at your slide 5, that when you're discussing it with a community, and they're now becoming more and more used 5 or 6 times a year, seeing red flag warnings that'll come out, everything that's described in this slide is in that red flag warning, that when they're issued, they equal these components. And so while we've been messaged and been told a red flag warning doesn't necessarily equal a PSPS power shutoff or public safety power shutoff, there hasn't been further clarity, and in the slide deck you're presenting is a further promotion of, in essence, a red flag warning. So is this going to, for a community, when they see, well, it's gonna happen with strong winds, dry vegetation, and low humidity, if every single time they see a red flag warning, they're worried that now my power is gonna be shut off, that's something that our community, like, in terms of messaging on what factors specifically go into it, I think would be helpful as well. Because there's gonna be mixed messaging on that component.
I'm going back to my original question that I didn't think I got an answer to, which is this matrix of wind plus vegetation plus humidity. I mean, how many like, for any given locality, can you say how many times that occurred in the last year or 5 years? Or, I mean, is it once a year or is it?
I will ask, yeah, I'm sure.
That would just be interesting to know, I mean,
Yeah.
because if you get people fired up about, if they think this is gonna happen, once a month, but you're talking about every decade, then you're creating concern that doesn't need to be created versus, this is gonna be an annual, midsummer type of a risk that's gonna happen, we're gonna hit this type of matrix, whatever, I mean, I don't have a sense of it. Because, to me, those are kind of vague. I mean, strong winds, dry vegetation, low humidity. I don't know how, how dialed in that is with certain data metrics. That just doesn't mean much to me.
Usually our high wind is during a rainstorm,
Yes,
so.
lucky for what we're hoping for, is it stays that way.
That's good. I mean, I hope that's true.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm trying to
just-
get you some more information, Ty, around that whole risk model. Sarah and I are not experts. The expert could not be here today, so, but we will definitely.
I wouldn't doubt they're hiding. I'm gonna say that publicly. I do
Like I
not
said, this is a
doubt
new
they're hiding
program.
out and you are cannon fodder.
It's all
right now.
good. This is a new program. We want to get these kind of questions answered. We don't want to hide from anything.
Well, we're not
I
saying
mean,
you're
this is-
hiding, but
this
I'll bet
is-
you management's hiding. I'm gonna call them out
I
on
don't
it
think
right
they
now.
are.
You must have seen the
If they're
circle.
watching this, they can come talk to me.
No.
I think they're a little cowardly. I'll even
I don't
expand
think
on it
so.
a little bit.
No, we really want feedback. These are great questions. And I think the community is going to be asking these kind of questions. Shutting someone's power off, that's serious business. So, if you look at the other side, it's a wildfire. We don't want to have what happened in California. We don't want to lose lives. We don't want to lose property. So finding
But
that balance.
wasn't their line maintenance having something to do with that as well?
I have no idea. I have
Yeah,
not followed it.
I think we should be very careful about being truthful with
Right,
the public.
agreed.
Anytime the government kind of is not quite on the up and up is bad enough, but when their utility starts, falling in that category, I think it's a big problem.
I think there has been kind of a spotlight turned on maintenance for us internally too. There's been a lot of man hours and a lot of conversations into this program. It's the wildfire mitigation, not just the PSPS. So I think that we are turning towards, let's make sure we get our maintenance done. Let's make sure we can do as much proactively as we can before we resort to a PSPS or anything of that nature.
But what Commissioner Menser said is so true. I mean, if you overhype the situation to where it's a problem, you're just causing everybody grief that you don't need to. You don't need the grief, we don't need the grief, but you're gonna cause grief if you don't get it right.
And that's why I'm glad we could be here and have this conversation, so we can get these questions kind of lined up in order and make sure that we can present something that is not gonna create too much hysteria if it doesn't need to, but we can still get the answers to people who need it and how they need them, so.
It's kind of like the treasurer's office. I feel sorry for those folks over there. They have to accept all the irate citizens that are paying taxes. It's not the employee's fault over there, and it's not your fault.
No, I don't think it's about fault. I think it's about trying to do the right thing and working together. These are great questions, great thoughts, and getting the answers to those so that we can not have to have these red flag warnings if they're not needed. So, yeah.
Okay, Ben, you have another topic, correct?
I do.
Let's move to that. Get these gals off the
Are you
hook.
done?
Thank
and-
you.
All right, thank you. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to
Thanks for
see
the
you all
presentation.
again.
Appreciate it.
We could pass, if you have enough copy, we'll pass those around. After that last comment, maybe I should just get up and management needs to leave the room.
No, we're good.
Ready,
ready, set, power out.
Yeah, you guys might want to stick around one second.
The switch is off campaign.
We're out of here.
Yeah.
Hi, Kyle Bustad, Emergency Management. This should,
Like your county spirit, Kyle.
yes, thank you. Thurston County Emergency Management. Look, this is not PSC. This is a Thurston County product, so all smiles, for this one. And we are joining our regional partners, so Pierce, King, Snohomish, and Skagit, Whatcom. We're trying to rope Lewis County in if you're watching right now. So ambiguity with evacuation. So we tell residents, it's a level 1 evacuation. What does that mean? No one knows what that means. Heck, even first responders and emergency managers, we have to remind ourselves what it means. So we're moving to something that is a little more visual, audible, understanding, something that's a little more logical, because we like logic in government, especially in Thurston County, right? So we are moving to ready, set, go instead of level 1, level 2, level 3. So the idea is that we will have, depending on whatever instance we need to evacuate, so if there is a wildfire, or if there is an earthquake, or whatever it is that we need to evacuate an area, we can use this ready, set, go for that preparation. So ready means that there is something potential in the area. We want residents that require a little more time. So people that are not necessarily fully able-bodied, that require more time to load up their gear. People with kids, people with livestock or pets, that they have more time to get ready in case something happens. And then obviously go means go. So hopefully the residents have been preparing and with the set and the ready and the set, and then they're ready to go. So this is will be communicated through our TC Alert, which is our mass notification system in Thurston County. For anyone that's not signed up, please do. And also we had enough of these door hangers to print it out to give to all fire districts and all fire stations in the county, as well as the sheriff's department. So if there is an evacuation and they're going door to door, they can hand this to residents or in the neighborhood, or if there's even any preparation that needs to be done, they can hand this out. And then there's also a reminder for a go kit. So it's personal preparedness. We want everybody to be prepared. So this is their go kit, some reminders. And then the last thing I'll end with is that this was paid for by a grant and not general budget.
And we got copies without the information.
You got front on the back. You got the copy on the back. Kyle came really prepared with the door hanger, so
yes,
the back
and then
side.
I left examples with the crew on the side.
How many do we have printed out?
Over 1,000.
And so are they
Over
being?
1,000?
Yes. Because our idea is we're going to give them to all the fire stations around the county. And so if we need, so it's preparation right now. And so we are seeking additional grant funding to print out more flyers so that we always have them on hand, so that we can replenish the fire stations. And the file, the electronic version, is also sent out to all of the communicators in the cities and towns in Thurston County, so that if they wanted to print them out themselves, they can do that. But also, especially for South County folks, we are always ready to provide them any kind of resources that they need.
And you were talking on the back, there's even a rough checklist as a reminder for what the, yeah.
That's a great door hanger.
I really like the checklist. It forgetful people like
Sure.
myself. So when is the next grant going to be When will we know if we got more funding for something?
Actually, hopefully this week.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Yeah, we're hoping this week we'll know, yes, hopefully this week.
And who is the grant through?
It's a hazard mitigation grant program, so it's through FEMA and, passed through Washington State Emergency Management Department.
Can we, go ahead.
By any chance, we just had this presentation from Puget Power. Some of these people that are in need of, I don't know, the seniors maybe, medical folks that have oxygen machine with a line or something. There's a lot of different equipment, and I don't know, somehow we ought to maybe be letting them know that if the power company is gonna cut your power off because of this, and that's coming, it's a proposal coming, now maybe it's not there yet, I don't know where it's there, but I don't know why we wouldn't wanna coordinate a little bit with the power companies, and get them to fund some of this type of activity. Hey, if we cut your power off and you have needs that can't be addressed if you don't have power, you might need to put together a little escape package and, go to one of the kids' houses if they're old folks, or go somewhere where there's power to run whatever their medical equipment is.
Yeah.
I don't know how much is out there, and I don't know how much research has been put into the percent of our population that requires those special needs.
A lot.
Is there a lot of it
Yeah,
out there?
and as as the population's aging,
Yeah,
it's gonna
bunch
get.
of old folks out
Yeah,
there.
it's gonna
better
get
start
even
paying
more of an
attention.
issue.
And that's a great question, and I will say that the Thurston County Emergency Management Team is being really proactive with preparedness and reaching out. So right now, we are working on, what does the sheltering and cooling program look like? Especially for our rural jurisdictions. And so we are touching base with our faith-based communities, because we know, as Commissioner Fournier said earlier, we have opened shelters and cooling centers before, but we know that people don't typically go, right? They don't want to be in a strange place. They want to be home. So what we're trying to do is figure out, how do we accommodate that in a productive and efficient way? So maybe we open them up during the day, and give them the resources they need to go back to their house to spend their night at home because they want to. But we have great partnership with Sarah from PSE, who has, during winter storms, coordinates with us on activities that are going, so that we can be a force multiplier for that information. So if there is PSPS, we will hopefully know in advance, and that we can be proactive in messaging out our through TC Alert, that area, and then also being proactive with preparedness information. Now, I don't know if necessarily we'd be able to provide them the actual go kit. That is something that we have talked about, and what that looks like of, can we help them with power and energy during those times, and we're still working on it. I don't think we have the answer, but we are doing what we can within Thurston County's emergency management's perspective.
Maybe, we don't send a billing out every month. I guess, I don't even know if the power company does. Do they do it every month, every 2 months? My wife pays the bills. You get a monthly bill from
Water every 2 months, garbage every 2 months, electric every month.
every month.
Every month, yep.
So if PSE is thinking about putting this program that they just did a presentation on in place, I would think they'd be willing to help make proper notification, help make preparedness take place. So let's put it on their back a little bit. I wish they would have stuck around so I could have sent that message home.
To speak to that a little bit, to keep making sure that we're keeping these two initiatives separate, is we want to make it very, very clear what Ready, Set, Go is. This Ready, Set, Go initiative, just to keep them separate, is very much, there is a fire, there is imminent danger. We're notifying you that you need to either get ready, you need to be set, or you need to go right now.
But it matches with PSE's trying to do.
But that's in preparation and trying to prevent fire, so they're proactively shutting off the the power, and we want to be very, very certain that our community understands exactly what to do in the event of an evacuation. What I will say on the flip side is during our initial conversations, and we're still working on ironing that out, is how do we piggyback on their messaging to their constituents on the circuits they're looking to shut off, the 2-day notice, that we can piggyback and make sure our so we don't have to duplicate messaging. How do we make sure that we have our shelters set up in those communities? How do we make sure we have our resources set up in those communities and we use their, I would say, conduit of messaging to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, so that even on that initial text, email, call notification that they're giving to their customers, they're getting the information for Thurston County. This is the local.
I can understand that, right? Like, ready, set, go, and hey, when it's go time, your power's gonna get shut off, get out of the neighborhood, you can't be here. That I can understand, but like, hey, it's gonna be hot this weekend, expect your power to be shut off for 4 days, thanks, click that.
That's gonna cause a riot.
Does not make sense. And I know that's not your issue, but like,
But I appreciate
it's
it.
hard to get past, it is hard to get past that for me.
Are you guys,
I would appreciate being a conduit on this one.
have you or can you address other languages with this information?
Yeah, it's, yes, that's a fair question, and we're working on it. It is, so I'll tell you, any messaging, any alert component, any preparedness component, we are working on how do we translate it into our at least top 5 languages in the county. It's difficult because we want to get it right, and we want to make sure that we don't ever want to use like a Google Translate, because, for example, if we were doing an exercise, an active shooter exercise or whatever it is, and we say like, this is a drill, does that then translate into this is a power tool, right? And then we message that out and people are like, what does that mean? What we are trying to do is engage with those leaders. This is why the faith-based communities come into play, is we are trying to engage in those communities, the leaders in those demographics and those communities, so that we create a partnership that if something is happening, we can create to them, so then they become a trusted source within their own community. So they become a force multiplier for messaging, for preparedness, and it's not just some random, guy that comes up in a Dolly shirt that's telling them to do something. So it is on our list, and we are working on it. And we've engaged with the state's language person to try to figure out how do we translate materials. And
you're also partnering with the PIO team, right, to get a press release out and some other social media.
Yes.
Is this not, I was just gonna ask, is this not something that can be included in the grant application too? Or when we're requesting, right, I know that, public health has, done contracts with like translation companies in regards to like making sure that they're getting it in different languages. Is that something that maybe the grant could cover, or is that not?
It is. So it is something that we've included in all of our propositions. So, and we are working to just make it a part of anything that we do, any product that we're creating, any product that we're doing, it just becomes standard that as part of the planning process, as part of the product development, that it is translated into. So it's built into the original budget as it is. So yes, we're not there yet.
I appreciate you mentioning the connecting with several organizations and faith-based organizations as well, because that is very important, especially, when we're reaching out to communities of color and creating that trust as well, or just different communities, right, where you're trying to create that trust and not just have someone, a random phone call or just a pamphlet that says this, but actually have someone who's in a way connected and informing of this. So I appreciate that approach as well. Thank you, God.
One thing that makes people real nervous when they talk about taking care of yourself is personal protection. I don't see anything about personal protection on here for protecting yourself or your family. And in today's day and age, when we have armed carjacking, for an example, is a common thing society is seeming to put up with. And there's a lot of things besides firearms that could be utilized. That, you know, could be a baseball bat, a taser, anything that has to do with, you know, protecting yourself, changing the outcome of what's about to take place. Pepper spray. So where's the balance? Where do you comment about be prepared? If you're going to be prepared, I know what that means to me. I got a gun with me when I'm prepared. If I had to leave, you know, there's a firearm in my bag, and I'm taking it with me.
Be prepared to fight your way out.
Well, you have to be prepared. So, but it's different things to different people. And like I say, whether it's some kind of a weapon, I don't know, a firearm only applies if you meet all the qualifications for a fire. You don't know how to use it, or you don't have a concealed weapons permit. You know, there's things that come into play there. So what's your alternative? Is it a baseball bat? Is it pepper spray? Them shocking things scare me half to death when just those tasers when they're going off.
They hurt.
Yeah, I don't want anybody using it on me. So I think we're missing the boat.
I think
If we
comfort
don't
or
at least
entertainment items, right? Whatever brings you comfort.
Comfort, yeah.
Comfort.
Well,
That's a great thing about
Ease of
personal
mind.
preparedness.
Teddy bear or brass knuckles.
I don't think that works the teddy bear doesn't do you much good.
Is there any sense in communicating if you do not leave, you're on your own? You know, like if you don't go when you're told go, you're on your own.
Sure. It's complicated for Washington because we're a home rule state, right? We don't have the powers like Florida emergency management. They can force you to evacuate. Where we take a tactic, can't necessarily force it, we encourage it, and then we also explain the potential consequences. Yes, and then also re-emphasizing that no one's like after this person, after this firefighter or a deputy leaves us on your door or talks to you, they're not coming back. So if
your house is engulfed in flames,
it's done.
You can't call us because
yeah. So it's a re-emphasis to that resident that this is it. Like you have to go. No one's coming back after this. So that's the approach that we take.
And is that covered in here as well? Ready, set, go? And if you don't go, you're on your own?
Well, keep in mind here that when you're hitting those level 3 evacuations, those are door-to-door notifications in those communities by deputies or fire personnel that are having those conversations and checking those residents to impress on those individuals the immediacy of the need to leave. And so that's part of the conversation that's happening. This is preparedness on, you have your checklist, you're ready to go, you've gone through the steps, you've prepared. The most resilient communities in this nation are those that are prepared. And so we're empowering them to be prepared. This is what it means. And when you hit a level 3 evacuation, when you hit go, that information is being handed to those residents door to door to door for those evacuations when those are issued. So not only are they getting email notifications, not only are they getting text notifications, not only are they getting wireless notifications that are being placed on that community, not only are they getting the door-to-door and the information, they're being impressed upon in just about every single communication venue possible that it is time to go, and this is the last stop. And
But
so that's
I
the
do think
conversation.
impressed upon them that it's important is you're gonna be on your own. You know, a lot of people have made proper preparedness. They've got metal roofs, they've got metal siding on the barn towards the hayfield, or whatever it is. You know, there are ways that you can stay home and live through whatever the problem is, but you better be prepared. And I do think it might matter that you say, you know, there's a chance that authorities are not gonna be able to assist you after today.
And those are part of those conversations that are being had.
But it wouldn't hurt to have that kind of stuff in writing. That way, they know it's real. You know, they can't say, well, nobody told me that. Yeah, it was right there. We're not coming back, if we're not coming back. Let them know.
can I do a time check real quick? Are you covering this Medic One topic today, or is that different?
No.
So this is the last piece of our.
This is the last piece.
Okay, then carry on. I just want to make sure we didn't have to squeeze another topic in.
No.
Okay.
This was it. So,
All right, other questions on this? Ready, steady, go? Ready, set, go?
Thank you.
thank you very much.
The pepper spray in your pocket.
Add brass knuckles to the
Hey,
fire.
and the pepper spray in your pocket isn't comfortable if it goes off in your pocket. I'm gonna just tell you that.
That stuff hurts too.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner items is final topic for this morning. Is there any Commissioner items?
I've got one.
Go ahead, Commissioner
I
Evans.
think Wayne might be familiar with it, but over by Offutt Lake, we've gotten a letter or something about late night activity, or I guess, or activity in general, but I believe that activity's been taking place over there for the last 50 years or something,
As long as there's been train tracks.
you know, so maybe it's the last 100 years. So I don't know what the proper response is to it, other than let them know.
Can I ask some clarification? When you say night activity, what does that mean? Is it just like
Oh, I guess they're
revving cars or?
trucks pulling in and out and fueling up. I guess that's what's going on, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some kind of station there that does something with refueling.
Yeah, it's a refueling spot that
Yeah.
there's a siding there.
Yeah.
They pull in on the side there and, offload product. In this case, it happens to be fuel, I think.
Yeah, and so then at night, there's been rail cars that have been coming onto a line that isn't really used much, and when they come on there, there's lights that are lit up, and it's disturbed a few residents.
But it's been there a long time, this transfer station.
So what
Yeah.
is the request?
I mean,
Pardon?
What is the request?
Oh, I don't know if the request is, can't we do something about it, is the way I read that letter, right? I don't know.
I didn't get the letter, I saw people complaining.
Did I
on
get the letter?
social
Was I the
media.
only one
Yeah.
that got the letter? I thought everybody got the letter. It's in your district, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why they wrote to me, but I guess because I've been here
He's a
long.
nice guy. But yeah, like, I mean,
I just don't think there's a situation that we have to intervene in. It's just part of what's going on
you
there.
guys had interactions with that rail line out of Rainier, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's not, I don't know that it's the same group of people, but you know how it is to deal with railroads.
Yeah, and that was very difficult, yeah.
Mighty utility or something they call it.
Yeah,
There's a reason it's called that. No, I think it was there before people moved there, so.
Okay.
Anyway, I was by there this morning just to look it over, just in
Yeah.
case, you know, that there was anything out of line. I don't see anything out of line. Normal activity that's been going on, and somebody currently, it's kind of like moving into a farm neighborhood and the neighbors have a rooster. Some people don't like the rooster, so I guess, I don't have a solution for it, because I don't think there is one. It's just part of life in that area that's been there for a long time.
yeah, if it's permitted activity.
Do you mind Robin sharing the letter with?
I thought that had already been done, and I actually thought Wade got it. I guess I didn't pay attention that close, but, okay.
I just
Nope.
saw it on social media.
She'll have it out to all of you. It's been out or not yet? Not yet, okay. Well, good, I'm glad I stopped by and got on top of it right off the bat. Trying to be responsive to our constituents.
No, that's good.
You have one, yeah.
Well, I just was wondering if everyone received the email from Karen Frazier in regards to the Olympic Marathon Trials 40th reunion. If not, then I will go ahead and share that email with, or I'll have Taylor share that email with the rest of the board. And it's just, there's just different events that are being held that week. And just an invitation for all of us. There's going to be
a reception on May 17th at 1:30, and then they're gonna have like a dinner at 4:30.
They just have different events, and they're all listed out, so I'll just have, Taylor share that with the board if anyone's interested in attending. Some of them fall on Saturday, but I just got my dates confused, so never mind, I will. And then, that is it for me.
Okay.
No, I mean, I thought we were going in order. I don't want to hog the show.
What do you think, Wayne?
Yeah, I just wanted we had our TPV meeting this morning, and, there's extra one, Robin wants to, Rob. It was a good meeting. There's a lot going on with Transportation Policy Board. Executive Director, I love this remarkable thing. This helps me, I feel way more organized already. That airport effort to locate a new airport, there's still a group talking. It's being reorganized, and they're reforming a different group to study airport needs in Washington, and Mark Daly's tracking that, but there's nothing really to update on that. There's a lot of talk about the redistribution of $140 million in federal funds that's coming from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. There's a lot of other states that haven't been able to spend that money. So when that money's not obligated around September, it will go back to states that are ready. And so the TPB is trying to make sure that, you know, our region is prepared with shovel-ready projects to be able to access that money. And it's a variety of different buckets that money will be available in. And they're calling it like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get some infrastructure projects done. And it's kind of like the surface transportation block grant funds as far as like what it can be used for. The 2024 call for projects is out. There's $19.4 million that'll be distributed throughout Thurston County, mostly CMAQ funds, $600,000 for surface STBG flexible funds in addition to the $500,000 that the county provides. $1 million in trail preservation funds is hopefully being obligated to our trail system. The RCSP Rural Chip Seal Projects or Rural Community Support Program. This funds smaller impactful projects. They're asking communities to submit an app for their highest need projects. $550,000 will be available, distributed equally among applicants, with half going out in 2025, half going out in 2026. And Thurston County itself is eligible for, and I have a hard time understanding what this is. Thurston County is eligible for up to $5 million in funding through the Rural Community Support Program. They're talking about setting big regional goals for that money that's available, the big money that's available. And the main topic of discussion is regional trail systems, because a lot of folks feel that that's something that can benefit all communities and more people than just specific, projects. And then there was a presentation on congestion management process. So they're having to study congestion management now that the county has a population greater than 200,000. That triggered that.
Greater than what? What was
200,000?
So they're a little late getting there then?
This is just what I was told by the staff.
Okay.
So communities over 200,000 are required to do congestion management program or congestion management process. It's a federal requirement that they're kicking off now. That's it.
Was there any talk about the transit suggestion to put a roundabout out at Meridian and Martin Way?
That was not part of the conversation.
Come up at all?
No.
And so is there anything new about that? We're gonna hear about that, I think, from a group of constituents quite
The one
regularly.
we've been hearing about?
Yes. I just wonder if they're saying there's some planning going into it. we haven't heard anything about it that I know of, and usually something like that would go through.
You kind of looked into it a little more, didn't you?
Well, yeah, and Public Works came in and provided some information on it, and so really what they're doing is they're doing a traffic impact study right now. Of course, Intercity Transit is advocating for a roundabout in that area just for the accessibility of the buses turning, but, you know, Public Works is going through the process on like, okay, like, let's look at the higher level of the bigger picture of like, what are the actual needs of this, roads and just looking at like, what would be the infrastructure needs, and so that's kind of where they're at right now. It's really at the beginning stages, so Public Works remains very neutral in this. They're not advocating for anything else, but they're just kind of waiting to see the results for that study.
Well, one of the things that's come up is like, those folks have argued that a roundabout is not the appropriate mechanism when you have two major roads coming together, but since they said that, it's come up like multiple times that there's roundabouts in exactly those situations, and I've refrained from making snarky comments, but I would like to hear from Matt, like, is there any, because, you know, the guy's waving around a study of some kind, so I don't know where he's getting that information, but that doesn't seem to comport with the reality on the ground and how we have other roundabouts at major thoroughfares. It's just not true that you don't use a roundabout when there's two major roads intersecting. We have them all over the place. So I'm just curious about that, the Public Works like best practice on that, or.
I'd like to have Matt come in and tell us a little bit about that, because we're gonna hear about that for a while, I believe.
Yeah.
That community is getting pretty well organized.
And they're going to be submitting some documents, but I feel like, again, it's good that they're engaged, but it's very premature just because there's just, and Public Works, like, this is not just the only study they're doing studies on different intersections. It's just a process that we always follow with any kind of request, and so, you know, them saying that, you know, we don't even need to do a traffic study, we just need to stop it right now, like, that's not, you know, fair to, like, all the other people who want to know, like, what is the actual traffic impact in that, and what is the avenues that we can create to make sure that there is kind of a free flow throughout the whole area. And so it's just, again, the process. And I mean, Matt can come in and kind of provide a little bit more information on roundabouts and how they decide if a roundabout is needed, and we can.
Aren't we literally putting a big one at Trosper and Capitol?
Yes.
As we speak.
Right, like with, there's no Union Mills and Marvin Road, we're putting a big one in.
Tom Water just put 2 and the whole, yeah, that's the Prosper.
If you don't want one, it's wise to come in early in the process and file your complaints, because, you know, like.
Once it gets going.
Yeah, once it gets going, and it always seems like, well, it's kind of underhanded, how, well, we're just gonna do one study, and then we're just gonna do one more study, and every study gets closer to that goal. Well, it's too late, we did all these studies already, now we
I
have
don't
to do
begrudge
this.
them coming in
Yeah,
and speaking
I mean,
in their
I
mind
would be doing
about
it if I was of their mindset, you know, that.
I guess I'd just like to be able to have them know that, yeah, we're hearing them, and we're aware and looking the situation over, I guess, that's all. I don't want them to think we're just kissing it off, because they've got their concerns.
But that road is also more than just that neighborhood's road.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
big road that a lot of people use, so.
And Intercity, just because I do serve on the Intercity Transit Board, Intercity Transit has been in touch with, because they have also come and provided public comment at the Intercity Transit Board, so they have had multiple conversations about this with them as well. So it's not just, it just hasn't been our staff, it has also been the Intercity Transit folks have been providing a lot of information and letting them know kind of where they're at in the process, and so they have also had those touch points with them as well.
Is the major need intercity transit's like wish to have this thing, and they're just looking for ways to like place it and use?
Well, it's not their wish, they're just looking at ways where, you know, they can like better, and they were, you know, saying, you know, they started having conversations and they applied for a grant to see like, is this a possibility, right? Like if we do a traffic impact study, like, could this be a possibility where a roundabout could provide also kind of that ease as well for our buses as we're dropping off people? So it just kind of played in par.
Aren't we very early in this winter? There, like, at this stage, there's nothing really to report.
No, the feasibility, study hasn't just be getting underway. And that's always the challenge, right? There's operational needs of an entity, but then there's the bigger picture of what actually is the appropriate tool to be used in that for traffic control intersection.
First time they came in, I felt like what I was hearing was concerns about the construction process, you know, and the disruptions that would occur during the year or 2 years or whatever. But then the second time they had a different set of arguments. I was hearing a different set of arguments, more about this is not a good thing for the long-term period. So I don't know if that was just, they were trying to pick their strongest argument, or they were sequencing their, you know, they only had 4 minutes and they needed to kind of chunk it up. I'm not sure, but it's kind of interesting.
Maybe a follow-up on the railroad. Apparently, Robin and Matt are both working on that. And they're asking compliance to just take a look, see if there's issues. I have another issue.
Go ahead, sir.
I got another letter from one of the school districts, and I want to say it was the Rochester School District about reduced funding due to the DNR thing. So now we've got several letters, I guess, of concern from junior taxing districts. And that was one of my big concerns when we ventured into this arena. So is there any chance that we could have someone from staff find the information that these districts did they lose funding? Are they losing funding next year? Or is it going to be over the next 10 years they're losing this?
The problem with this is they're looking at cuts that we're trying to not have them not do. And,
yes.
But if we're successful, there's a whole bunch of other timber to be cut, and we don't know where DNR would go. We don't know where they would pivot to cut and whether that would produce the same revenue to the same beneficiaries. So it's kind of, it certainly would be an impact, they're not wrong to say that cut could mean this many dollars to us, but if they don't cut there, they're gonna cut somewhere else, which might be the same number of dollars. I don't know the answer to that. DNR would have to pivot, say, if the court said, you can't cut, you can't cut these areas because you'd be violating your own, HCP obligations and sustainable, then DNR would just pivot to the others. The presentation we had from the forestry group showed that there's 15 years worth of harvestable timber available to them right now. Now, whether the same dollars would go to the same beneficiaries, I don't have that answer.
And staff can sort that out.
Well, here's what I'm wondering. Is there any chance that to assure these districts that they are not going to get reduced funding because of an action we are taking, kind of theoretically for the public benefit is why we're doing this. Well, we don't want to have benefit for one group and reduce funding for other groups. So I don't want the schools or the fire districts to receive a lack of funding. And I'm ready to, without having more information, I'd make a motion that we will not allow our actions to create reduced funding for junior fire districts. And if they can show where this has been reduced because of our actions, we'll fill that void. I don't know, take it out of our emergency, what do we have in there, $4 million or something? We don't have any place else to get money. And I'm trying to assure those organizations or entities that might be having a concern of reduced funding, that they're not gonna lose funding. I don't know, I'm looking for a solution to assure them what we're doing is not gonna adversely affect them.
I think the concerns show that there's underlying issues with the whole funding scheme. And that's what sucks. Like, that whole scheme, it doesn't provide consistent revenue for anybody. It's like where, you know, I think it's completely antiquated. But like, how do you overhaul?
How do we
this
fix it for them?
130-year-old system that is way beyond us?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I get
That's
where you're
the
coming
issue.
from, but it's like, if you'd have to create something that would do what you're describing DNR's made it impossible, because over a period of, so let's say, let's take Rochester School District. So they're adversely impacted because DNR pivots to this area of trees. Well, but in 5 years, they may get a windfall that they wouldn't have gotten. I mean, it's so inconsistent year to year, you'd never be able to say, you don't know what they're gonna do, where they're gonna go, and who's gonna benefit. So you could never say, this detriment here isn't gonna be backfilled and supplemented, you know, and somebody with a windfall in 2 years or 4 years. I mean, the overlapping series of trusts that overlay capital state forests are just wrapped into this.
Right, but right now, the letter from Rochester says that we are going to lose this funding because this project is not being carried through. So, I don't know how that fits.
Which I'm not sure if there's like, because I had some questions, I received the letter as well, and I was wondering, right, like, Superintendent Rakedahl has said that the timber money goes into the building fund, and that's kind of
That's a separate pot of money, though. There's different
separate,
pots
yeah.
of money.
Very different.
So then the direction for the schools is not for it to go onto, but again, timber revenue is not consistent, so like, the fact that, you know, for me, like, I think that's the picture that we need to know, right? Because if Rochester School District is saying that they're funding 6 teacher positions with this timber money, right? Then, I mean,
How do you do that when it's like
how do you
this?
do that when it's like, you can't expect that funding, like, because it's, you know, you cut down those trees, it's like one-time funding and then that's it. Like, it's not like a year-over-year funding that's going to be coming to those districts. And this goes back to kind of what Commissioner Fournier, you said at the beginning, just the whole system is
But is DNR
ludicrous, but-
using this against us? Kind of, is this a tool they're knowing that we're concerned about? So is that what they're telling those folks, that you're not getting any money this year because the county is doing this to us? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I mean, it's more in depth than that. I'd like to have an answer somehow.
So I forget which jurisdiction we received the first letter from a few weeks ago.
Fire.
Fire district. And I looked at that one, and the dollar amount in that letter matches the workbook that DNR sent us that has projected cuts over the next, I think, 5 years.
Yeah, they all got that same spreadsheet that we did.
Everybody got, okay,
But
so.
what DNR didn't say is, if we don't make this and we did this alternative sets of cuts, here would be the
That's right.
breakdown.
DNR did
They
not
just
say
say,
that.
here's what you would get, and then they're setting it up as a dichotomy of 0 versus this.
So-
And that's a false explanation, it's a false narrative.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Could we respond to it, to them that way?
But what I'm starting to say
Tell-
is
yes,
that
I interrupted,
the
yeah.
letter matches the amount in the workbook. I've not looked at the Rochester letter yet, but I'm suspecting the same thing. And as you've said, the DNR workbook is, maybe we will do this. It's, we're projecting to do this. Nicole spent a lot of time trying to sort out on actual revenue that the county has received. Which cut did it come from? And one of the things that she thinks, she's learned, or not thinks she's learned, but one of the things she's learned is that, the permit is issued to cut the timber, and then the sales happen over time. So we might receive money in 2024 from a permit that DNR issued in 2021, and money just kinds of trickles in. It's extremely difficult. We've found no way to predict. It's hard to figure out where the money that we receive today, what stand that's connected to. They provide enough information to the treasurer to allocate the money when it comes, and that's about it. And it's extremely hard, but it is all on a what if basis. What if we cut here? What if we don't cut over there? Maybe we're gonna do this. It's
So, you know, I mean,
possible.
yeah, one of the major candidates for land commissioner is saying that he'll put a mature forest policy in place on day one and take these lands off rotation, and we can dismiss our lawsuit and it'll be a moot point. But
So after November, if that person,
if that person's elected,
I
this will
want
be
to
a moot
talk to you
point.
offline somewhere along the way.
But, so I mean, this is not just something, some crazy thing Thurston County is talking about. It's being talked about across the state and in different counties. King County's got a resolution calling for this, you know, and
Nothing's gonna happen between now and then either, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean,
So in other words, these schools or fire districts are not gonna lose funding between now and.
the fire district letter in particular, I checked all of the cuts they referenced, and those were all up, like, nothing's happened yet. Now, the school district referenced Juneau, which
Yeah, they
is,
had
I think,
several.
paused. So they could say that they're being impacted by that pausing of Juneau. But a lot of them are looking at the cuts, because as I've said, there's this aggressive schedule of cuts of older forest over the next 15 months, and they're looking, you know, forward. So a lot of it's a lot of it's
It's all maybe,
prospective
it's a maybe, depends.
versus having actually happened, at least with the fire ones that were identified. But it's true that if the lawsuit related to Carrot were to be granted, it would have a ripple effect on those other cuts. But then I believe DNR would then pivot and find other areas to cut, which we've seen the layout. There's plenty of timber there to be cut that doesn't fall into that older forest, mature forest category. And then there'd be there'd be money to beneficiaries. I just can't, unfortunately, I can't tell those junior districts, you know, what that would look like, because I'm not the one planning the cut sequences.
Right, and for DNR to say that the county has to take into consideration the impact on the junior taxing jurisdictions, when we can't figure out what they would or wouldn't get is, improper.
Okay, so a little bit after 11, we were supposed to break. I guess we're all gonna be at the chamber event, or most of us. Is there, what do you got
Yeah.
there in your hand, sir? Looks familiar to me.
Well,
Your band?
I didn't get to be a twin today because I didn't get here in time to.
yeah, I got t-shirts.
Yeah,
There's
to
an
get
extra one up
to
there.
get a t-shirt.
I'll sell it to you for
I
$50.
just wanted to get it, so I brought these in from my car as I was listening. And,
8 tracks.
yeah, well, hey, these are modern. These are
Oh.
It is.
There just happened to be some tracks from the Holy Mountain Boys, I'd point out, that the music is great, so.
We're on Spirit Day promoting our favorite bands, so. I
There you
appreciate
go.
that. All right, so I think we're at the end of the agenda for today, and it's 11:02, we're adjourned.